Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I am your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy podcast studio. And we are super excited to have Dr. LJ Johnson on our podcast. We actually met her. Actually, I don't think I met her. Janet met her in Phoenix at a Freedom Conference that we were at back in November. And we are super excited to be talking about endometriosis. And she reminded me earlier today when we were on a pre-video call that this month is National Endometriosis Month. So she's been very busy, as you can imagine, since that is what she talks about. And we are super excited to have her on our show. And it's just perfect timing with Endometriosis Month. So without further ado, LJ, welcome to our show.
You. I'm excited to be here. I think I was telling you, like, it all worked out, right? The scheduling, a little rocky, but I think it showed up in the perfect time, in the perfect month, with it being Endometriosis Awareness Month, all things endometriosis, kicking the misconceptions to the curb and empowering our audience. Like, that is what we're doing every single day in March.
I love it. So, we should honestly start out with just a definition of endometriosis. How would you define endometriosis?
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys the shortest Reader's Digest version, but it's going to be a stacker, right? So I'm going to lay that foundation, and then I'm going to have to build it up from there. So endometriosis is uterine-like tissue found outside of the uterus. And I always say that twice because I'm sure some of you are thinking, like, hold it, that's not what my OB. This lady's already on the right track, the wrong track. I'm on the right track. Different definition, and that's going to make more sense if you're dealing with endometriosis. So endometriosis is uterine-like tissue found outside of the uterus, chronic systemic inflammation throughout the entire body. It has those endometriosis lesions that create their own hormones. So they bring their own estrogen, they bring their own progesterone to the table. You have those autoimmune-like factors as they're rolling throughout your entire body, chronic pain and inflammation. And then when we roll that all together, endometriosis and its hormones do impact the female cycle. However, I'm going to change that definition and really empower it. It is not a period problem. You are not a weak woman. This is not just the woes of having a uterus. It is anything but that. It's that chronic inflammation, and your body is responding to it 24/7, 365. I know it's in the month of March, and we empower a month, a lot in the month of March. But those dealing with the diagnosis or have been diagnosed like myself, you are managing this every single day of the year.
Awesome. Janet, what questions do you have?
Well, first, I would love to hear how you became involved in this. Is it because of your own journey?
Absolutely. I don't come from the high horse. I say it all the time. And my listeners, as they listen, they're like, here she goes. Yes, I don't come from the high horse. I come from the low horse. They've been there, done that horse. Took me 16 years to be properly diagnosed with endometriosis. That was 16 years of being in pain, suffering, walking around saying things like, I hate my body, I hate my doctors, I hate my uterus, because I'm basing off of these misconceptions. I dreaded my cycle. I dreaded every day. I was a single parent that, some days I was on the news giving you all these health tips to be amazing. Other days I'm laying on the bathroom floor, literally praying to God I make it through another day because the pain was debilitating. So in that process of getting my own diagnosis, doing everything conventional medicine had to offer, and then realizing my health was not getting any better, I had to really step back, heal myself naturally, close my private practice, and then I came back to do what I do today.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're doing that. So, in traditional medicine, and this is what I tell patients quite commonly, and whether it comes to a cycling issue with women or any kind of issue that has to do with their cycles, including endometriosis, kind of the tongue-in-cheek thing I say is, well, if you're under 40, they give you birth control pills. If you're over 40, they give you hysterectomy. What are your thoughts about that?
So my first thought is, I think the over 40 and under 40 was very accurate until recently. And the last few years, I have patients coming to me 18, 21, 25, no womb. And I'm like, whoa, right? Like that gives me chills. However, we're also seeing a lot of younger patients be put on things like Lupron and Orilissa, putting them in medically induced menopause, right? So it's like not
Oh
quite the
my.
hysterectomy, but they're kind of teasing it out, right? And this is just to turn off your period, just so this 13-year-old, this 8-year-old, this 10-year-old can have quality of life. So it has really shifted. Birth control is a Band-Aid. And I tell people, whether or not you use a little bit of pharmaceutical, a little conventional, Western, like when you're dealing with endometriosis, you're pulling from everything you can. However, you have to realize that birth control is not going to necessarily cure your endometriosis. It's not going to stop all the symptoms. It may or may not turn off your period. It may give you a little more quality of life there, but that's really all it's going to do. It's not an end-all be-all cure. However, on the other hand, there are lots of people with endometriosis that have had hysterectomies, full, partial, whatever. They've yanked everything out. And over 70% of my current patient load, they've all had hysterectomies. They're still cramping. They're still bleeding. They're still having pain. They're still having issues. And so this is really where we have to start looking at, like, is birth control really, the first line of defense? Is hysterectomies really being oversold? And then we also have that whole crowd that is being put on these medically induced menopause medications, which are still suffering as well.
Wow. I had no idea that young women were being put on things like Lupron. And I mean, to deplete a young woman of hormones, or any woman for that matter, of hormones at any age, is just, the health consequences are tremendous.
Yep.
Wow.
I can relate to that. I openly share my story. I did Lupron. I was at my bottom. I'll talk about how I did Lupron, and I signed up for a hysterectomy. Lupron was sold to me as there's nothing else we can do. We've tried every form of birth control. You're saying that you can't take care of your children. This is the end all be all. Let's turn off that cycle and everything's going to be okay. Well, no one really wanted to talk to me more about my period was my 5th vital sign. It's kind of like having a surgery and saying you're not going to take the oxygen or you're not going to check your blood pressure, right? Like that's not an option. So turning off my period, I was told that it'd make it better, but turning off that 5th vital sign did not make it better for me. Secondly, it was the misconception that if we turn off your period, then it's going to turn off the problem, which comes under that whole menopause and, endometriosis is a period issue. And so I did it. I signed up out of desperateness. My insurance wouldn't pay for it. We saved up a bunch of money. I remember like pension pennies, like legit taking resources from my family so that I could get this because I needed my life back. Went in for the injection, was supposed to get a 3-month injection. Somehow they gave me the 6-month injection. I was stuck in medically induced menopause for 2.5 years. Bone loss, lots of dental issues. I had implants that started coming out. My teeth were cracking. I couldn't remember my children's name. I packed on a bunch of weight, didn't change my nutrition. My entire world, I went from about 28 to about 68 within 2 weeks. And it was like, what the heck is actually going on? I felt like I was going absolutely crazy. I was in tears. I was in pain. And did I mention I was still cramping? I was still bleeding. I bled through my brand new couch. I'll never forget. The manager felt so bad for me. They sold me another one half off because he was like, we can't give it to you for free. It wasn't his problem, but they felt bad for me. And that was my Lupron experience. However, I was told, turn off your period, turn off your hormones, make it better. Big misconception, right? Like it doesn't work for a lot of people that do Lupron. And even at the age of 44, I'm still paying the price for some of those medications that I put in my body. Because like you said, they deplete nutrients. As soon as you pop that first pill, not demonizing it, but most pharmaceuticals are going to deplete you of magnesium, calcium, all of these nutrients, these building blocks. So then it comes to where is the pharmaceutical really the reason you're having the symptoms? Or is it now that you're nutrient deficient? It's like the chicken or the egg, right? It kind of bounces back and forth. But if you're only using those options to manage your pain and your symptoms, that's really what you're going to be looking at.
Wow. So you mentioned early on about inflammation, and inflammation, as you probably know, is the root of many diseases. Many chronic diseases, it's the root is inflammation. So tell us some of the treatments that you recommend to prevent this inflammation in endometriosis.
The first thing I say about inflammation is I'm huge on analogies, and I like people to think about it. When you have the diagnosis of endometriosis, you have a small fire that is burning 24/7. Either your daily actions pull the trigger and keep that fire, nice and small, or those daily actions turn it into a bonfire. So when you're in pain, when you're cramping and you're bloating and you're having these issues throughout your body, that's when that small flicker has turned into a big bonfire. So that's what I want you to think about as your inflammatory response. When you wake up in the morning and you do that, the code, and you kind of do the body scan of where are you at, that's when you really look at your inflammation. The biggest thing I do with my patients when we first start off, it's kind of the unsexy stuff. Nobody wants to talk about nutrition, right? Because in their mind, they're on an inflammatory diet, they're eating clean, they're organic, they're vegan, they're like, don't touch my nutrition, I got it under control. And I'm always like, let's just assess it. This is the biggest mistake that I made and that I see in the people I work with. We take these cookie cutter diets, AKA nutrition. I don't even like using the word diet, but at that point, it is truly a diet. And we just hang on to it. Everyone's going vegetarian, juice cleansing, water detox. We just grab onto it. We stick with it, hell or high water. If we get better, great. If not, we don't. Most of the time, the cookie cutter nutrition is not going to manage chronic inflammation within endometriosis or any chronic illness. You have to figure out your trigger foods. Period. I know that it's frustrating. I know that you don't want to log your foods. I know that you're just like, LJ, tell me the 10 foods that I can eliminate. Yes, some of those basic foods are going to be, probably getting rid of the gluten, the wheat, the dairy. However, those may not be your triggers. I always use myself as an example. For me, corn was a trigger. I was eating organic corn. No one told, I had no idea, but then I'd be super bloated. I had pelvic pain. I was cramping. It was like, I would eat at 6 o'clock. I'd have not just the bloating, but also the endobelly, right? The belly that is distended, radiating heat and inflamed. So you have to identify your trigger foods, which is going to mean some food logging. I always love for people to bring in digestive enzymes. Typically, when you're managing endometriosis, there's going to be some type of gut dysbiosis. Whether or not you have H. pylori, that bacterial overgrowth or anything, you're probably going to need some digestive enzymes, some stomach acids to really break those foods down. Once you identify your trigger foods, it's the consistency. It's not just I eliminate the foods Monday through Friday and I throw my hands up and have an amazing time on the weekend. Because when that happens, you do the party on the weekends, and who's in pain Monday and Tuesday, possibly calling into work Monday or Tuesday. So you have to figure out those trigger foods. You have to be consistent. And that's where I like to start. And then the other part of this is detoxification. And I think sometimes when people think detoxification, they're thinking a diet. You're on Amazon right now trying to get, the quickest detox pills, which I never recommend. But when I say detoxification, it's basic stuff. Drinking plenty of water, right? Making sure you're pooping 2 to 3 times a day. That's not the fun part. No one thinks about that. They just want clear skin and great libido and zero pain. But making sure you're detoxing your body. We have a toxin bucket. When your toxin bucket is full, that's when you have the inflammatory response. So what are things that you can do every single day to detox your body without doing a huge healing protocol? Drinking water, warm lemon water in the morning, very simple. I do lemon slices. Most of the times I do use a certain essential oil because it's more potent. Warm lemon water in the morning, making sure your bowels are moving. If you want to bring in caffeine, which it depends on caffeine. I'm not going to demonize coffee, but my biggest thing is make sure we're getting mold-free, pesticide-free coffee, because any of those endocrine disruptors can exacerbate your pain. So doing those things to make sure your bowels are moving, making sure you're hydrating your body, getting out those trigger foods, and then anything to move toxins out. That could be something as simple as an Epsom salt bath. It doesn't have to be a $2,500, $3,000 sauna. Yeah, some of us have those. I tell people, because I get DMs all the time, must be nice to have all the biohacks. Before I had the biohacks, you know what I did have? Epsom salt from Target in a bathtub.
Right.
That was my detoxing back then, right? I was going old school, and I still do it today. So you don't have to have all the amazing biohacks that you see on our Instagram, or you see, all the people have the red lights. We all have to start somewhere basic. Epsom salt bath. Only thing I say about Epsom salt bath for detoxing, make sure you're sweating from your forehead. If you're just laying in there on your phone and texting and hee hee ha ha, I need the sweat pouring from that forehead. When you're sweating from your forehead, you're detoxing. You may not think of that as decreasing inflammation, but pushing those toxins out that cytokine war is going to decrease cytokines, aka inflammation on the nerdy terms, but just decreasing that will keep you out of pain. You've got Epsom salt baths, magnesium baths. Maybe you're not a bath person. You can put magnesium spray or gel on the bottom of your foot. You could apply it topically if you're having pain. I could go on and on and on because this is my jam. I also love to bring in supplements as well. Now, when it comes to supplements, I don't like to make a lot of huge recommendations because a lot of you guys want to DIY. And what I find is that we're just grabbing the cheapest magnesium that we can find.
Right.
The one that was on, I mean, and I've been there. So this is how I know you guys are doing it. I used to do it about 15 years ago, right? The ones on clearance that are maybe expired, but I'm just desperate to get that. And it's like, okay, it's not even bioavailable. You know, you've got the most expensive urine ever because none of these supplements are working for you. So when it comes to supplements, you definitely want to be working with someone. Ground level, everyone needs a good multivitamin. You need to be dousing your body with minerals, you know, bringing in quality whole foods. There's a lot of different things you can do as far as inflammation, but I would say some of those are the basics. And then we just kind of have it stacked from there.
I love it. Janet, you have a question?
I think those are really good points to point out because when people come in and we're talking to them about supplements, there are some supplements that you will never absorb and they're still being sold. I mean, they just, like you say, they go right through you. They don't do any good at all. So it is a waste and it's kind of tough to navigate that. And it's surprising how many people don't know that. So that point was brilliant. I really like hearing that. And also the magnesium part. We've used rubs and that's helped with cramping, just even normal cramping of muscle cramps. So imagine somebody that's already inflamed and using something as simple as that, it doesn't cost you a lot of money, but it's very easy and very, something you can do at home without a lot of expense to it, I guess is my point on that. So I love those. I love those tips.
Well, my comment too is on the supplements and you kind of alluded to it, LJ, is that, fix what's causing it first, like with dietary stuff, eliminate the things that are causing inflammation, and then add supplements, because supplements are just that. They're to supplement our good, healthy diet and lifestyle already. And the same thing with the biohacking thing. In fact, Janet and I had a half-hour podcast on it, just us two, on the biohacking. I believe in red light therapy. I believe in infrared saunas, a lot of that stuff. And we're seeing it everywhere. But don't forget the main points of sleep, exercise, diet. You don't do all that biohack. Don't spend all that money on supplements and the biohacking if you're not doing those first three.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys see it in your practice, just like me. It's quicker to buy a supplement, get a membership to a sauna, to do this, that, and the other. Nobody wants to do grounding and put their feet in the grass. That's not cool, right? We just want to pop a supplement, as you said, which is a supplement. But it's realizing that we have to go to root cause. And with endometriosis, I'm always big on saying this, and some people love me for it. Some people are like, unfollow, I don't agree. And I'm okay with that. But I have to be honest with you. Endometriosis may be your diagnosis, but that is not your root cause. We are not blaming it on genetics. We are not blaming it on, my family history. I know, especially in the brown and black community, it's like, oh, my mom, had a hysterectomy, my grandmother, that's just what we do. I'm not buying that, right? Endometriosis is not your root cause. And if you want to bring in the sauna and the red lights and all those fun things, I think those are amazing. I love ozone insufflations for my ears. They've helped with brain fog, all the cool stuff. But at the end of the day, I still tell my patients, we have to look for root cause. When you're managing endometriosis, your root causes are going to fall under hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, oxidative stress, energy production, all of those things in the nutrition, those are going to be where you find most of your healing opportunities. But I get it. If you wake up right now and you're bloated and you're cramping, you're not going to sit there at the office and be like, I bet I have some gut dysbiosis. I should probably, no, we're like, what the heck can I do right now?
Right now.
Yeah.
Presentation in 2 hours. I look 9 months pregnant and I need this to be deflated. And so then we go for that. So that's why I love to build out the toolbox. But, yes, get the peppermint tea, get the ginger, bring in the essential oils for that Band-Aid, but realize that is only going to give you maybe 2 days, 2 hours, whatever support. If you have leaky gut, if you're eating your trigger foods, if you're in toxic relationships, if you're living in mold, Lyme disease, all of those things, those are going to be what I call your unsexy root cause. And all those little things are going to help, but you have to put in the time, energy, and effort, partner with someone that's going to get you to the other side. Because if not, you're just throwing supplements at symptoms, right? And 1 second you're on 5 supplements, and I've had people come to me on 35 supplements.
Oh, yeah.
Been there, done that.
Do I have 35 supplements in my home? Yeah, but I don't take them every day. I take them as needed. But I'm talking about y'all have them lined up, and you're still feeling horrible. And I don't know about you, but I like a return on my investment. If I'm taking something after a couple of weeks, honey, I need to be feeling something. Like I need to know that it's working. I need to see some results. But you're taking DEM, these huge doses of DEM, and you still have murder scene periods. You're taking all of these supplements for period pain, yet you still take a week and a half off work, but you're going through the motions, right? Because in your mind, you're holistically healing, and holistic somehow has just the supplements for the symptoms. And so we need to really move from that pill from every ill on conventional, a supplement for every symptom, and find that happy medium. But yeah, I'm sure you guys have seen it, the 35. I mean, everything.
Yeah. And typically, LJ, a lot of those patients that come in with 20 or 30 supplements, they're really anti-pharmaceutical because they got tired of taking 20 different medications. So they're like, well, I just take 20 supplements now. And it's like, I get it. You're anti-medication, but what are you really doing with these supplements? It's like, I'm a frugal guy myself and a minimalist. So I'm one of the guys that's less is more. I mean, find out what is causing your problems and only take what is necessary.
Absolutely. But it's a challenge because you're doing it on your own most of the time. And I started there. I was doing it all on my own. It was me and Dr. Google. And back then it wasn't even Dr. Google. Back when I was dealing with it, I was on like Baby Center and MySpace. And clearly we did not have the podcast and the Instagram, how we openly talk about all of that. I didn't have that. I mean, I got married when I was 19 years old. I was very young. I was pregnant, had a baby, dealing with endo, never had any fertility issues. However, my worst endo flares were during my second pregnancy, which kind of made me start to think that these whole misconceptions of when you have a baby, everything will balance out. No, I didn't have children to cure my endo, but I remember having a conversation. I'm like, so how many children? Am I creating a basketball team? Give me more information. I'm too deep and I'm still in pain. When is it going to work with the whole have a baby, get pregnant? And then I was like, well, that doesn't work for everyone. I'm like, okay. Then I did the Lupron, was still miserable. And that's where I was saying, I mentioned, I signed up for a hysterectomy. I felt like I had no other options. And my team at the time was not giving me any other options. They were kind of like, either shut up and take the birth control. And I was like, I can't, it makes me miserable. It's making me crazy. I'm a sassy girl, and add in the birth control, it was just too much sassiness for me. I'm like, who is this crazy person? I'm like, I got to get off these pills. I'm like, I cannot remain employed if I'm on these medications. I need something to calm me down. It was way too much estrogen. So I signed up for the hysterectomy, and I'll never forget it. I was at my wit's end. I was raising 2 children and couldn't get off the floor some mornings, not able to be an active parent, taking my children to appointments and couldn't remember their name, couldn't remember their social. I'll never forget filling out paperwork for my daughter. And I'm like, what, who am I? What am I? So I was like, okay, I give up. I've tried everything. I booked the hysterectomy. They couldn't get me in for 6 or 7 months. And it's interesting. I haven't told this story in so long, but I couldn't get in. So I had to find something to get me through. And so in that process, what I ended up doing is searching online, and someone said that they had tried keto. And I was very new to keto. I had never heard of it. I tried it, and I will never say that, keto cured my endo, because it did not. But that was one of the biggest pivots in my health as far as decreasing the inflammation. But I also say that that was a long time ago. That's not what I do now. As my body matured and healed and developed, I didn't need that strict keto. If I went into ketosis now, it's probably just because I'm up and going and my metabolism is working. But I went in for the pre-op, and my doctor was like, a lot of the stuff that you're having problems with, we're not seeing anymore. And he was like, if you want to opt out of the surgery, if you ever want to come back. And we're still very good friends to this day. And he's always checking in on me, even after I've removed, and I never needed the hysterectomy because I had to make some substantial changes. Was it fun for that 6 or 7 months? Not always. Was it easy? Did people understand? No. And a lot of people didn't understand because I looked okay, right? And if you
Right.
look healthy, that's another part of the gaslighting. It's like, well, I remember one of my doctors, he's like, well, I just seen you at the gym. And I'm like, yeah, but just because I was at the gym, like I'm suffering. When you don't see me at the gym,
Yeah.
I'm like crying and in tears. And so it's being able to empower yourself with options, realizing that you need to get all of the information. And a lot of us have made decisions, even myself, based upon the information we had, which was not really the full story, which is why we need to have your podcast and have us speaking out so that the next generation is more well-informed and is empowered to really just advocate for themselves.
I love it. What a success story. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, one
Thank
of
you.
the things too that's very frightening to me, and we've been at different conferences, and one of the things about having the hysterectomy is there are consequences.
Mhm.
There's consequences long term, and one of the statistics we heard is that each woman that's given a hysterectomy, it takes about 10 years off their life. If that's true, what is this doing to somebody who hasn't even developed hormonally? If we're talking about young women, I mean, to me, that's very frightening in the journey of life. I mean, putting somebody in that position so early is just shocking, let alone somebody who is menopausal or perimenopausal.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I feel that same statistic kind of matches also for those who are not using clean products, those who are being doused with all the pesticides, you're living in mold. Like I said, when dealing with endometriosis, even when you're having the hysterectomy, like it may give you a little quality of life, but I've seen people do amazing excision surgeries, which excision, we didn't really talk about the surgical, but excision by an excision specialist is the golden standard in conventional medicine to have endometriosis removed from your body. They actually cut the lesions out. They don't burn them. They don't scrape them. Like they're cutting them out, like getting down on hands and knees, like you pull out a weed. That's how they pull out excision or pull out the endometriosis. However, a lot of people are still not making lifestyle changes. Their toxin bucket is full, right? We're
Right.
dealing with fillers and Botox and breast implants and mold illness and
Yep.
all of these other things. So I feel that statistic matches. I mean, when you have a hysterectomy, it is taking years off of your life, but it's the same impact when we have a toxin bucket where we're just dumping toxins
Yeah.
in and never getting them out.
Yeah, if you don't change, you're going to have to keep having those surgeries, I guess, the endometriosis surgeries. And I don't think that's really a good option.
It's tough. A lot of people
Yeah.
have had repeated laparoscopic procedures, and laparoscopic, which is being sold as removing endo, is not. Laparoscopic procedure is the diagnosing of endometriosis. It is not the removal. Excision is the removal. However, like you said, we don't make these lifestyle changes, toxin bucket still overflowing, inflammation is going up, up, and up. Then you have those people that are having surgery every 2, 3, 4 years and wondering why they're not getting better. And it's simply because they have not made those lifestyle changes. They wanted that surgery to be the end all be all. And then that's where they get caught in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, LJ, the comments are just lighting up. I mean, people are really loving you talking. So, Julie, let's go ahead and start from the first comment. If we can stream that one. And I have a hard time. Oh, she tagged somebody. So thank you, Kelsey, for tagging. Thank you for watching also. Let's go to the next one. And let's see.
On, yes.
Spot on. Tina Main, thank you so much for commenting. I'm going to have to get a little bit closer to my screen. Go ahead and screen the next one. And I experienced all of this and changed my toxin exposure and no longer suffer from polyps and painful menstruation. So spot on. Isn't that cool? That's awesome.
It's the
all
toxin
right. Thank
I
you
love
for commenting. Thank you for commenting, Tina, and thank you for watching. Let's go ahead and stream the next one. And it looks like Kelsey again, looks like she tagged somebody. So obviously this is a big popular topic. There's a lot of people with it. And we had a lot of people engaged today, and we really appreciate that. And while we wrap this podcast up, LJ, tell us what you have a passion for.
Outside of endometriosis?
Yeah, right. I mean, you already showed me you have a passion for, right?
I have a passion for empowering women, particularly to get in the driver's seat of their health. We've been gaslit, we've been lied to. There's so many misconceptions. My goal is to get you in the driver's seat. Typically, what's in the driver's seat are your symptoms, your diagnosis, and then the lies that you're being fed, right? And then we just kind of settle in like, oh, that's how it's going to be. And I'm always one to like clap back and be like, no, no, no. That is not how it's going to be, and really give you the tools so that you can show up in your world. If you're managing a chronic illness, especially endometriosis, you're typically hiding in plain sight. I want to give you the tools where you're not hiding in plain sight. You can live your best life, and you actually have a toolbox that's not necessarily going to wipe out the diagnosis, but for a lot of people, it's going to put it into remission, but just give you quality of life. Like, who wants to wake up every day at war with their body?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
no
Absolutely.
fun.
You know, and you've helped us. Our goal of this podcast is to educate and empower
Mhm.
people to take charge of their own health. So you've definitely helped us realize that goal today, LJ. And I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. And if anybody has any questions and wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is on Instagram. I do have a website, ljspowerhouse.org. We're making some changes. So I'd say best way is on Instagram under the Holistic Endo Expert. I also have my own podcast, which is the Holistic Endo Expert Podcast. We talk all things endometriosis, functional health, PCOS. We talk about all of it. If it's the unsexy and you need answers, we are bringing you the answers as far as functional medicine. We're also on TikTok. And yeah, send us a DM if you want to chat further. Maybe you're listening to this and you're like, hold it. She may know a couple of answers. We'll provide the link in the show notes, and you guys can book a free discovery call, that complimentary call. And we can kind of talk about some of the things you're going through and see if there's some ways that I can support you on that healing journey.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on today, LJ.
Thank you.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Thursday to our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will have Pete Serrano on. He is actually running for Attorney General of Washington State, and he is going to be talking about how an Attorney General can actually affect healthcare in the state. So you don't want to miss out on that. Pete Serrano, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time Thursday. Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.